Greetings, members, one and all of the Salivation Nation. How to invest in silver, doubling your money. Let's explore. I chose those words very carefully in this title, with the understanding that most of you are familiar, that I typically don't see this lovely shiny metal that you are witnessing before you. I don't see it as an investment. I see it for what it is. It has value in and of itself. Silver, in a sense, sells itself for how it has acted in the marketplace for thousands of years. In the long run, it preserves your wealth. It acts as a hedge, a sort of a savings account against economic instability outside of the financial institutions from which we are all familiar. And those financial institutions, including the currencies that surround them, are essentially depreciating through time. Well, you look at silver and you look at the price performance of this metal, and it's been very volatile for quite some time. And so seeing this metal and wondering how it can be an investment, you have to take a look at it from outside of the confines of that safe haven. And I believe that's one way that we can see it as an investment. The metal itself may just happen to be the vehicle, but the forms from which it's traded, whether it be a numismatic coin or other forms that I'll talk about later in the video, are ways that you can, quote, invest in silver, unquote. And we're going to reference an article here from market-alerts.com. And in this sponsored video, we're going to talk a little bit about how the silver market is and how you can invest in precious metals, looking back through the lens of history and kind of where the modern day way to be able to make money off of silver. And make no mistake, as with any investment, there is always a risk, and we'll talk about some of that risk in this video as well. So when you take a look at what the United States government and the Federal Reserve Bank, which is a private institution, have been doing with the dollar, about 20% of the dollars that are in existence have been digitized or printed out there, have been created this year in 2020 due to this pandemic. And what happens whenever you make more of something, it becomes less interesting and obviously less valuable. But throughout the course of history, since about 700 BC, silver has been utilized in some sort of financial transaction for sure. And this is something that has gone on for millennia and centuries. Epochs, empires have utilized silver and for the everyday common transactions. And it's really up until the late 60s that really stopped around the world. But you take a look at how much silver there is in the world. You know, when you compare it to gold, it is plentiful for sure compared to gold, but nonetheless, it is a metal that is rarer than the base metals that are out there. And by the way, base metals are still used as money today, copper being the best example. And, you know, we have seen what has happened to the dollar since the creation of the Federal Reserve Act in December of 1913. And what was the price of silver around that time? Well, it was about 59 cents. And today it's about $24. It's about 40 times more than it was then. So that tells you something. You know, when you take a look back, how the value of the dollar has declined greatly throughout history. 59 cents back then is worth about $15.59 today. So the value of silver really didn't change when you look at it through that lens. It's really the dollar that has changed and has devalued. And it's very difficult for many of us to get into that mindset when we think about it. This is why I don't see silver as an investment. I see it as the ever so constant but obviously the price changes, but the value does not. It's just the challenge for many of us at times to recognize that value. That value transcends beyond what it does as a hedge, though. You've heard me talk about how the markets have shifted in its view of silver, as opposed to being something that piggybacks gold as a monetary metal and as a hedge against economic instability. It is definitely a commodity as well, just as much so, if not more so now, and as seen by the markets, more so as that commodity. There's a lot of things going on in the world today, a lot of technological advances, a lot of progress because of this metal right here. It is one of the most diverse. And when you think about it, what's the most, there's a difference between being diverse and being mostly widely used. I would say the Iron Age brought about, with iron ore, and iron itself as a metal is probably the most widely used. But one can make the argument that silver is probably the most diverse metal out there. Maybe copper would be a close second. Maybe one can make the argument for that being the case, but I believe silver's unique properties make it as such that we will continue to find more and more uses for it. You heard me talk about in a recent video how it's being utilized in smaller and more flexible in more ways than one batteries. And we will see that technology hopefully come to fruition, where silver demand could increase, which makes it as a commodity something to pay attention to as a potential investment for that regard. And we're going to talk a little bit about how that investment strategy can play out. But first, let's again review that silver is widely used in electronics, photovoltaics, in other words, solar panels. A lot of solar panels are being created out there and being utilized. And so it is something that is going to be in great demand in the coming year and years to come. No matter the political situation, it's just a matter of the market itself. There is a lot more green technology that's out there. That's a good thing for the environment, but as well also for being something that is going to be price effective and economically viable for many of us. This is the sole reason why I got solar panels for my home. It became economically viable. And so that was an investment that I made in silver that actually helped me save money on my energy bills. So in that way, it's an investment. But there's another way to invest in silver that's outside of the physical that you see here. And this is where this gentleman, Roy M., has talked about how he doubled his money in 1 month. And that is to buy silver in the form of exchange-traded funds, ETF, paper silver. And people say, well, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. But there's a growing populace in this community who not only hold the physical, which I strongly encourage you to do, but it is also to, maybe look into it in the electronic format. It is, and paper silver is something that is highly liquid and traded, and mostly not tested by the physical. In other words, we know there's a lot more paper silver out there than there is the physical that backs it up. And likely, if you were to cash out, you'd have to have enough to be able to get a good delivery bar. And that good delivery bar, I think, is 1,000 ounces, 72 pounds of silver. I've seen one of those bars, and it's a sight to behold for sure. But nonetheless, futures contracts and ETFs are ways to be able to buy silver and to do it in such a way that you can cash out at strategic times and make money, because of the problem with buying physical is you are going to pay a premium above the spot price. We all know this, and we accept this because of the manufacturing costs and or government restrictions on or government mandated premiums, such as you see for the American Silver Eagle. And so those are things that we come to understand when we buy the physical. And so when we do that, we are essentially losing if the spot price stays the same and we go to sell it, because we're not going to be able to recapture those premiums at the time of sale. And so in that way, even though we believe silver is very liquid, it is very easy to sell, especially if you have a local coin shop around or you're trading it on private platforms. You got to be very careful there. But it is not as liquid as a push of a mouse button. And that's what happens with ETFs. And then you have to worry about security and the like. But obviously there's drawbacks to ETFs as well. And some of them could be hacking as well. People talk about Bitcoin being hacked. What about your Robinhood account or any other type of deal out there? Or what if if it really is tested to try to cash out, some people say the COMEX and what have you could collapse if they can't deliver the physical for people that put money in these ETFs. It's highly unlikely that's going to really happen. But it is another way to be able to work your way into the marketplace and utilize ETFs to your advantage as an investment. Now, typically ETFs, they rise and drop with the LBMA and other market drivers out there. But there's another way. You have the SLV, iShares Silver Trust, and then you have Aberdeen Standard Silver Shares ETF, SLV, and SIVR. And they're pretty straightforward because they don't really have what's known as leveraging. And this is that the underlying entity rises by a certain percentage, and the ETF price will rise twice as much or even 3 times as much. But the risk in that, in investing, put your money in that strategy, means that if it drops by the same percentage, that it could drop 2 times or 3 times respectively. And this is how the author here of this particular article that I will link in the description below, Roy M., made money, doubled his money in 1 month by putting money in AGQ, which is ProShares Ultra Silver. It has a 2 times leverage. And I think there's others out there, and Roy has a website in general about investing called market-alerts.com that may be interesting to check out. But it's just one way to be able to do it, to actually invest, to be able to superpower that move in silver prices. But again, it provides some level of risk, because if it's leveraged, it can be leveraged to the upside as well as the downside. So if silver loses $1, boy, you're out much more than $1 if it goes down. So that's something to always consider here. But ETFs and electronic silver have never really been something that I've been interested in, but I'm not really into the stock market either. But there's a growing number of folks out there, very savvy investors, that stack physical silver, and also hedge themselves with ETFs. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's part of diversifying in a portfolio. And I think that's kind of where this article is going in it, is understanding the potential for a great return, such as Roy got here with doubling his money within a month during the pandemic, provide just yet a different way to be able to use silver to help you make money. And that's something that is pretty fascinating, that it can be done and utilized in that effort. So there you have it, another way and how to invest in silver for it to either, number one, pay off greatly, such as how Roy was successful in his investment, but also you could lose big time, if that leveraging, is utilized to the negative if silver goes down. And we know how volatile silver's been, so be very careful with that. I think those that are not leveraged is probably the safest option out there, because why do people put money in silver anyway and gold? Because of that safe haven status. Although in the last probably year, we have seen more and more folks see silver as a commodity, and so they're putting money there in that regard. But nonetheless, there it is. Very interesting indeed. So this is a way to invest in silver. So I hope you found this video useful and interesting. I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch, and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.